So my question basically had to do with voluntary prayers and like Sunnah prayers. Like for example, specifically for like Dhuhr or like, well, mainly specifically for like Dhuhr, the Sunnah and voluntary prayers for Dhuhr. Like, is there any are there any narrations or anything specific to how long they should be? Because to be honest, I feel like I could sometimes get into excess with it, and I'm just wondering if it
Mm.
like you know what I mean? Like, is there like
I think it's clear. Sheikh, do you have any additional question? It's clear to you.
No, yeah, I understand. Question's clear. Jazakallah khair. Okay, so the question is about voluntary prayers and what the extent of it is, because a person can get carried away if they let themselves keep praying. So first of all, there are different types of voluntary prayers. A kind of unrestricted voluntary prayer, which is a prayer that is not associated with anything else, right? It's just a voluntary prayer on its own, doesn't have a time or a number, right? In terms of limit. So therefore, you can any time outside of the makruh times, the undesirable times for prayer, which is at the time of sunrise, at the time of sunset, and at the time of noon, around 20 minutes in each one of those time areas. And after performing the fard of the asr and at Fajr time, other than the 2 rakats of Fajr, 2 Sunnah rakats of Fajr, excluding those times, you can pray any amount of nafil at any time.
Okay.
So that's when we talk about unrestricted voluntary prayers, what we deem to be just nafil, but not nafil associated with another prayer.
Okay.
Which brings us to the question, which is that the Sunnah prayers or the voluntary prayers, and depending on which fiqh you follow, there are different levels of emphasis associated to them. But generally, the voluntary prayers before and after prayers are not what we call unrestricted voluntary prayers, but rather associated voluntary prayers. They're known as the Sunan Rawatib. And the reason why they're called Sunan Rawatib is because they are in the hadith, they're mentioned associated with the fard.
Okay.
So they are for example, for Dhuhr, it's 4 rakats before the fard and 2 rakats after the fard.
Okay.
Right? For Isha, it's 2 rakats after the fard. For Fajr, it's 2 rakats before the fard, and so on. And in the famous hadith that talks about the Sunan Rawatib, 12 rak'at are mentioned in total in the day, for which a person is rewarded a house in Jannah, and there are other virtues mentioned. So these Sunan Rawatib, in the Hanafi madhab, for example, are not regarded as the same as other nawafil, because other nawafil, if you pray them, you're rewarded. If you don't pray them, you're not sinful.
Okay.
Right? However, the Sunan Rawatib in the Hanafi madhab are Sunnah Mu'akkada. Some of the other fuqaha use the same terminology. I believe this terminology exists in the Hanbali madhab as well, that they are an emphasized sunnah which should not be missed without an excuse, and that if a sunnah mu'akkada is missed without an excuse and habitually, so without an excuse and habitually, then it is the same as committing a makruh tahrimi, which is essentially a sin, right?
Yeah.
It's the opposite of it's like missing a wajib. So therefore, so you have to distinguish between the Sunan Rawatib and the Nawfal that aren't Sunnah Rawatib. Sunan Rawatib in the Indian subcontinent, for example, people from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh know that as Sunnah Mu'akkada. And most people, if they've studied even a little bit, they'll know what Sunnah Mu'akkada. Sunnah Mu'akkada is an emphasized Sunnah. That means it shouldn't be missed without a valid excuse.
I see.
Right? And if it's missed habitually, then most Hanafi fuqaha will say that it's sinful to miss it habitually. So the 12 rak'ats, for example, the 4 rak'ats before Dhuhr, the 2 rak'ats after Dhuhr, so that's 6, right? 2 rak'ats before Fajr is 8, and then you've got 2 rak'ats after Maghrib 10, and 2 rak'ats after Isha 12. These 12 rak'ats are what we call Sunan Rawatib. The Hanafis call them Sunnah Mu'akkada as well, and these are the most emphasized of the voluntary prayers before and after the Fard Salah.
Okay.
In addition, there's 2 rakats before Asr, 4 rakats before Asr, 4 rakats before Isha. There's 2 or 4, right? So, both are possible, both are permissible. These are what we call the non-emphasized sunnah, and In terms of emphasis, it's the same as a nafal.
I see.
Right? It's the same as like the 2 rakats of nafal after dhuhr. Similarly, there's 2 rakats of nafal after dhuhr, 2 rakats of nafal after maghrib, 2 rakats of nafal after isha.
Okay.
So these are, if you like, the prayers, the voluntary prayers associated to the fard prayers.
I see.
One can simply limit themselves to that. Right? So if you want a limit that's to do with the dhuhr prayer, the asr prayer, the maghrib prayer, the isha prayer, then what I've said are your limits. And that's exactly how the fiqh books will explain it as well. Beyond that, you have the unrestricted nafal, which is as long as you avoid the makruh times I mentioned earlier, you can pray as many as you want or none at all. The more you pray, the more rewarded you are.
Jazakallah khair.
All right? And of course, there are other specific nawafil in the day, like tahajjud, like salatul duha, etc. Perhaps you can, look that up separately. Those are more virtuous than the unrestricted nafal.
I see.
Right? So something for which there is specific virtue mentioned in hadith is more virtuous than an unrestricted nafal that you just pray at any time.